This is Python's Paradise. This is your host, Greg Gilbert, aka the Python Hyena, straight out of Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada. And folks, here we are on January the 28th, 2023. Now, I just got done an overnight shift a few hours ago at the hospital, and I would say good morning, Kevin, or in my case right now, good afternoon, Kevin, because he's 2 hours behind me. But he prefers it if we say good night, Kevin, because he's always ready for bed. Folks, I give you the host of Say Goodnight, Kevin, Mr. Kevin McCreary. How do you
That's
do,
right.
Kevin?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I love your show. You know, we'd got a lot we agree on, and I thought I need to get him on the show and talk about some of these things. But nonetheless, I know we both. I had the Cinema Snob on my show back in 2000 and I think it was 2019. I think it was, or 18, or
Yeah,
somewhere in
all the,
there.
from 2018 to now, all that runs together. I had a video that I'd recorded back, 2019, and I'd intended to release it. And I was like, I'll release that. And I looked and realized it had been 4 years since I made that video, and everything's all melded together. So it's hard to pinpoint when anything happened anymore.
Well, I got my interviews all dated, so you know
Yeah, I
what,
guess that's true.
that does help. But
Yes.
nonetheless, it was a lot of fun seeing you two collaborate on a video, and I certainly have something in common with both of you on what you were discussing. But I think before we get into that, I want to get some of your background. What led you to become the Say Goodnight, Kevin, and and what am I looking for? Your general interest in movies growing up.
Oh yeah. Well, I was always Kevin. My mom gave me that name, so
You
that was
sure
an
it
easy
wasn't your
one.
dad?
Well, actually, I think it was my mom because my uncle's middle name is also Kevin. So, and yeah, you mentioned Brad, Cinema Snob. He's great. I love that you had him on. He's a really nice guy, and it's interesting because getting to talk to him, like I was a fan of, a lot of the guy with glasses related content, the nostalgia critic. And I
Mhm.
actually, when I started reviewing movies, it was a joke, and I was a fan of nostalgia critic, and I was like, it'd be funny to do the nostalgia Christian. And so my first couple of reviews that I did were called that. And then I was like, well, I don't want to just rip off somebody else um completely. Obviously, everything you do on YouTube is to some degree a ripoff of somebody else, and that's okay. Uh, I bring my own special personality to all of it. So anyway, it was awesome to work with him. He had actually commented on one of my videos, and I was like, oh, neat. Hey man. And he's always been very nice, very willing to talk, and he's been at it for so long, so he's got so many stories and so much knowledge of film, and especially really poorly made cinema. uh, and and that's really one of my favorite things. I grew up in, I mean, primarily I review and talk about Christian films because that's probably the except for horror movies, I think that's the most like elevated bad movies that exist right now. They can be really bad and yet make a lot of money. Um, and so there's maybe a need for uh some sort of equilibrium there to and that's maybe where my passion and heart is to to find some sort of, hey, let's look at these movies as if they're movies. And if we were looking at a Christian movie like this and it wasn't a Christian movie, would we still accept it as a good movie? So that's kind of been my approach so far with
I
looking at some
love
of these
that
movies.
approach too.
Well, thank you. I mean, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of different stuff on YouTube. Like I said, it's not easy to just make something that's original, and I would never be so confident to say anything that I make is original. But I do bring a perspective that I feel is helpful. That I did grow up in a Christian family. I still am a Christian, and so I'm not looking at these strictly as movies to say, hey, why are Christians so dumb? Though that certainly is something I think quite often. But I don't see being a Christian as something that is at its base a dumb thing to believe, because most of my family believes it. And, I don't think it's crazy if somebody believes in Jesus. And so I maybe I'm softer on the religious side of it and really like to focus um, on the film making side of it, which it's interesting because my family, there was a lot in the 90s, especially in the world that I grew up in, of people who just didn't watch real movies. They would watch Christian made movies, and my family was never that way. We always watched real movies. Grew up on all the good ones like Star Wars and the Indiana Jones and other things that aren't George Lucas made.
The
uh,
Room.
The Room, of course. All
That
the
was
good movies.
that was my first guest on here, by the way.
Oh,
Back
really?
in back in 2015 was Tommy Wiseau. Speaking of bad
That's
movies,
incredible.
yep.
That's amazing. Yeah, I enjoy B movies. Like when I get together with friends and stuff, I have a PureFlix subscription, and if you don't have one, I'm not telling anybody to get a PureFlix subscription, but my goodness, you can just throw a rock at your TV and hit a bad movie, and it is fun times for
You
all.
need a lot of alcohol for that.
Yes, absolutely. And there is a lot of alcohol involved when I get together with my friends.
Going
We
back to
did it for
cinema stuff,
Christmas. Man,
huh?
the Christmas movies, people, it's real trendy right now to make fun of like Hallmark movies. But
Hmm.
if you want even worse movies than Hallmark movies, check out the Hallmark style movies on PureFlix, and
Oh my
you're in
God.
for a treat.
Were you a big fan of Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas?
Oh man. See, what's wonderful about that movie is it's so bad. Those are the movies that are so fun to review, because you watch those movies and you can't even fathom what type of scenario led to something like this coming to existence. And it's also just so sincere. Like it's so genuine. It's one thing to watch a movie where you're like, okay, they know it's bad, and they're like Velocipaster, for example, is one of those movies where that they're just intentionally making a dumb movie. But man, movies like Kirk Cameron Saving Christmas, they really, really think they're making a movie, and it's so far from it. And that's that beautiful, that's that beautiful, that ground where that sweet spot of wanting to do good or thinking you're doing good and it being bad. It's very Neil Breen or Tommy Wiseau, where you have this this arrogance about it, that you think that you're making something good, and bringing that type of thing to the table. That's rampant in Christian movies. It's beautiful.
Uh, it's funny. I was at the time a member of the Razzies when Saving Christmas won Worst Picture and all
Yeah.
those Worst Actor for Kirk Cameron and whatnot. And I'm so happy I got to help that film get that kind of recognition.
That's awesome. That's great.
Um, I gotta say though, going back to Cinema Snob just briefly, do you own any of his movies?
Yeah, I think I own the what's the Christian one? The Christian parody
Oh,
one that he did?
um, oh gee, I got it here too.
Yeah, you'll have to edit this part out.
Oh no, I don't have to edit it. It's Jesus Bro.
Jesus, bro, that's it. Yes.
There, I got that.
Uh yep, I bought that. I was gonna do like a review of it, and then, but I couldn't find an angle. Usually, I have to have an angle, especially if I'm reviewing something that is supposed to be funny.
Mhm.
And so I was like, well, it was better to just work with him, just to do a review of a different movie with Brad than to review his movie. Though still, it's not off the table. Um,
The Dove
but yeah,
Foundation didn't give it any doves.
yeah. Can you believe that? I guess it's something to do. I imagine when they saw Santa Christ, they might have been a little clued in.
You know what? I love the Passion of the Christ, but I find it funny because every one of these Christians that I hear protest R-rated films, I love shoving this film in their face and say, "Look what came close to an NC-17."
Yeah, it's true. It's funny because that sort of like boycotting, I always think of uh the Last Temptation, which is
Mhm.
for me one of my favorite Christ-centered films. I think it's so well, like it but it's not, it's so obvious. It explains at the very beginning, which I think is unnecessary, but it has this card at the beginning of the movie that says this is not supposed to be a depiction of the gospels or an interpretation of the gospels. This is a, and it explains exactly the point of the movie, and people still protested and hated that movie. And I think that establishes a lot of kind of the lack of nuance in Christian movies, that somebody tried to do something that is deeper than just giving a gospel presentation, and people protested it.
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a Christian family. I too am a Christian. I don't go to church anymore because one, it become too much about money, and two, I get tired of being having my life picked apart by these
Mm.
people that think they're better than I am. But my
Yeah,
dad
church
passed.
church
Y-
politics
Yeah,
definitely can be a
yeah.
turnoff.
But my dad passed away last April after an
Oh man,
8-year
I'm sorry to hear
battle.
that.
Yeah, thank you. After an 8-year battle with ALS, and I remember when the caregivers were doing something with him there at Christmas time, and he was trying to say something to them. And I come to find out, he was trying to tell them to get the Kleenex box off the Bible. Like, Dad was a believer right to the
Mm-hmm.
end,
Yeah.
and I haven't stopped believing, but sometimes I have a hard time believing in Christians a lot of times.
Yeah.
Which leads me to the first time I discovered you, because there's a group online that have blocked me because I speak way too much truth and I call out their bullshit.
Mm.
Um, and I've had Jeffrey Overstreet on here about this too, about 6 years ago. Um, the first time I come to find out who you were, when you were addressing an article called um, "Stop Picking on Christian Movies for the Wrong Reasons." Now, I'm just going to go on to say I hate Movie Guide with a passion.
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, I think Ted Bear, excuse my French, is an asshole. And I think the
Mm.
people that follow him are assholes. I think Evie Bear is an asshole for various reasons.
It's interesting, and sorry to interrupt. I just,
Yeah.
you bring to mind, because I mentioned, because there's people online who, I won't mention names, but great people who review Christian movies but do it from an atheist perspective, and then or from just kind of a focusing on the religious aspect. And then this is what I found when I started reviewing movies. There was that, and then there's the other side of the coin where you have people like Movie Guide or Plugged In, or I don't know, other other groups that only review the movie based on family friendliness, or based on whether or not this is um Christian enough, kind of. And I think that kind of gatekeeping review is it's odd, and it's exactly what Christians often complain about, the NPAA rating system, MPAA rating system is, they said it about Unplanned, that they rated it R just to make it less accessible to people, or same with Passion of the Christ. And yet, if they had the power, if people cared enough about Movie Guide or Plugged In, then they would rate movie. That's all they're doing, is rating it on whether they think the content is appropriate for families or not. And that would be a gatekeeping tool if people were concerned about it. But I feel like people are concerned about whether or not something's good, whether or not something can have bad material in it, but done either tastefully or done well. Is a movie worth watching? I think there's plenty of things that are worth watching. I think Last Temptation is a great example of that. It is, I wouldn't play it for children, but it certainly is something that, if you are thinking about these types of spiritual ideas, here's a very intelligent group of people presenting an idea. It doesn't mean you have to believe the thing that the movie is saying, but it does mean that it is, if you can think deeper than a couple of inches, then maybe you'll learn something and hear an idea that's different than what you believe, and you can contemplate that. It's certainly a conversation starter. And that, I just say that to say, it's interesting that when I was looked around for other Christian movie reviewers who were reviewing movies just based on the quality of the film, I found all of these things like Movie Guide. What is it for, other than I have a 3-year-old and should I take my kid to see Shrek?
It's funny because you notice how I got worked up just bringing them up because
Yeah.
boy, oh boy, I can't stand them. Um, Here's a funny thing too. I almost wonder, whether they would show the Passion of the Christ to a bunch of kindergartners. I right now, people with that mindset, I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah.
But most recently, Movie Guide said a statement that they've said a million times, and I think it just makes them sound dumber every time I hear it. I haven't seen The Fablemans because we haven't had it in our theaters.
Mm.
But they were complaining about, I think, the Golden Globes or something, and they said, "How could the Fablemans win the award when Top Gun: Maverick and Elvis made more money?" Now, I enjoyed Top Gun: Maverick, which is funny
Sure.
considering I did not like Top Gun.
Yes, I
Um,
agree. It is a better movie than the
it's a
original.
better movie. Elvis, I liked, but I had some issues with it.
Mm.
But here's something Jeffrey Overstreet always brings up, and I agree with him. He said, "For Movie Guide to say that, it's about the same as saying McDonald's is the greatest restaurant on the planet because it makes so much money." And I gotta wonder, is that what Movie Guide goes by? Because something making money does not make it quality. I don't
Right.
know how stupid they gotta be to not realize that.
That is such an odd statement. Like, I think capitalism can be a great thing. It can, in making money, I have no issue with, but there's nothing that has nothing to do with the evaluation of whether something is artistic or not. If the whole point of award shows is, all right, yeah, a lot of people can like a movie can make money for all kinds of reasons. I always joke about how, well, does that mean Transformers movies should be awarded best picture? I don't think so. That would be ridiculous, but there's something that it serves a market, so there are people who like it. But what is it serving? It's not necessarily serving an art. It's serving a visceral desire to see a bunch of machines beat each other up. And that's fine. People are allowed to like that. You can like what you like, and that's fun. But that's not, if you have to have some sort of criteria. And that's the point of an award show is, all right, the point of the market, the criteria is, does it make the most money? All right. If it makes a lot of money, then you get a lot of money. That's all right. That's all you got to do. But if you're looking at art and you're saying the criteria is this something that is bringing something new, or is something that's innovative, or something that is an art piece, then you have that criteria and you make the judgment based on that. That's such an odd there's so many movies that have made money. I mean, that just aren't art pieces. They are
Oh,
people, they're crowd pleasers, they're popcorn films. That's why they're called that.
I'll bring this up, and this is something else Movie Guide never thinks about. Okay, 1998, the highest grossing film was Armageddon. Is it the best film of the year? Nope.
No.
But I'm going to tell you something they never think about. What movies get talked about from 1998? You don't hear Armageddon get brought up. You do hear The Big Lebowski get brought up,
Mm-hmm.
which was it did okay at the box office. It's funny where The Big Lebowski is now compared to then, or Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which I saw at a midnight screening at a packed screening a few years back. And that movie bombed when it came out. Now it's a cult film. Does that not go through their head that, time will tell? Because
Or
Armageddon certainly isn't hailed great now.
I remember there was a book called The Bible, where it says that the road to heaven is narrow and the road to hell is wide.
Hmm.
Um, Not that people who watch certain movies are going to heaven or hell, but for somebody who claims to be a Christian to believe that popularity of content means quality or worth celebrating, would mean that there's a lot of people. The Church of Scientology makes a lot of money. Does that make it the truth?
Yeah.
It's just a weird precedent, a weird like standard to present. But you're right. It has to do with it's convenient at the time, I guess.
Hmm.
I'm not sure. I haven't read the article, so I or seen the statement, but that is very funny that I don't know that they're even thinking it through. They're just saying something that's convenient at the time. Like that article that said, "Are we it's okay to dislike these movies, but not for the wrong reasons." Well, you can dislike things for whatever reason you want to dislike them for.
Oh, I loved your response to that. I listened to that more than once too, you know?
Well, thank you. I'll have
Yeah.
to watch it. That's another thing it's been a few years. Probably been
Well,
4 years.
as back and forth, like I said, they blocked me now because, like I said, I tell the truth, but they don't want to hear it.
Yeah, that's
But
never something people.
yeah, but I remember when they. You still there?
Oh, yeah, I guess I think it's give me
Because
just a
I'm still
second.
recording here.
Okay, good. Give me let's see. Is it on this microphone now?
I don't know. I can hear you fine.
Okay, good.
I thought you were playing the rib on me.
No, it had I think it disconnected or something from the microphone, but I'm back.
Yeah, I was going to say the tipping point for me with them is when they recommended Pearl Harbor for mature audiences, and I found Pearl Harbor to me to be one of the most loathsome pieces of garbage I ever
Mm,
saw. Because I remember, of course, for them it was all about Americans winning and the Japanese being the bad guys. Problem is, there was not one three-dimensional Japanese character in the movie. Not that they cared, but I
right.
remember reading in the newspaper when that film came out that studio were trying to market that film to Japan and trying to figure out how to do it. And they decided to sell it as a love story. And then Ben Kaiser, who the author of that article that you responded to, asked me why I find Pearl Harbor racist. Why can't he see why it's racist?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think Pearl Harbor, even the love story
Garbage.
is garbage. Yeah, that movie it's I mean, it's the maker of Transformers, so it is Transformers. It's if it's the guy who made Transformers saw Titanic and said, "Oh, I know of a historical tragedy that involves boats. Uh I'm gonna make
Yeah.
one. I'm gonna try." Yeah, and it certainly is not a great movie.
Nope. Nope, not by any stretch. It was fun hearing, Ted Baer, the founder, criticize Apocalypse Now, which is actually a real war movie, but yeah,
That's
he
real
praises
rich.
yeah, but he praises Pearl Harbor, which is a piece of garbage. One of my biggest laughs was reading his review on Fireproof. That cracked me up because you could tell when somebody knows something is shit, but is trying to convince you that it's not. And he talked about Kirk Cameron in that movie like he was describing Marlon Brando and On the Waterfront. And I just shook my head saying, this is a predictable, poorly made piece of garbage.
Yeah, that's what that gets me, that kind of that approach that at least I've met many filmmakers. I've met the Kendrick brothers who, and I've had them on my podcast who made Fireproof, and um, Alex Kendrick especially has been really nice to me, and I think he's a great guy. But I'd say it to his face, I don't think they're great filmmakers. And all of their movies, and at least though he can admit, at least on previous movies, he's like, yeah, they can admit where they're at in terms of like film production. And but it's the audience. It certainly is that audience of, oh yeah, this is great. This is fantastic. And it's funny because I would get invited to some of these premieres of these movies, and I'd always run into somebody from Movie Guide, and they get to go to all of them. They get invited to every one of the, not maybe not the Hollywood ones, but the Hollywood ones for sure. And they write fluff pieces. I but I would just write or make a video on what I actually thought of the movie. And to me, you have that, maybe because they're serving an audience, maybe their audience wants to hear
Bullshit.
all, yeah, they want it, so he's serving it up to them, and so maybe it's consistent with his idea of, if it's making money, then it's good. You're serving that audience. But to me, I really would prefer my audience, I want an audience that wants to hear what I actually think, or um what a movie, what I think a movie really is. And of course, my opinion of a movie can be different than somebody else's, and I welcome other people to leave comments and say, I actually like this movie and here's why. Great, that's fantastic. But when I cannot get on and say I loved this movie just because I was flown out to a premiere, or I got to go to a junket and interview the mom from Everybody Loves Raymond, or something like that. Like, that doesn't impress me. That isn't something that I can be bought off on. But I think in the world of Christianity, or in the world of Christian movies, that happens. People get flown out, they get to stay in a nice hotel, they get to interview these people, and the questions they ask are, you can look at these junket interviews, they're like, how amazing was it for you to serve the Lord in this movie? That's not a question. Ask, like, why did you choose to make this film? What is your, ask them about their faith, but also, what is your, ask, you don't have to be negative, but you can ask them real questions about the movie. I mean, you see that in junket interviews for every movie. They get internet influencers to come in and ask questions, and they're like, oh, how come you're so awesome? Or you see these uncomfortable interviews with with somebody from Star Wars, and it's like, when are you gonna make another, and the movie isn't even about that. So junkets are weird, but man, the fact that they're able to, like, Christian films are able to not invite people who review them poorly, and only invite people who review them positively, and nobody cares. Nobody's saying, hey, all the people coming out of this movie that we now know is bad said that this movie was fantastic and great. But they have nobody's calling them out on it, and that's kind of too bad.
It's funny, they can't even get it right on movies they don't like. Because I remember when they were protesting The Wolf of Wall Street, and they're saying it had the most profanities of any movie.
Hmm.
No, it didn't. Canada takes that
Yeah,
prestige. Yep. You see, do you know who the Trailer Park Boys are?
yeah.
Yeah, Movie Guide's not familiar with them, so if they hear this, let me educate them since they need it. They're Canadian guys like me. There was a long, long, still going TV program, The Trailer Park Boys, and they had 3 movies come out on it. First one, uh, produced by Ivan Reitman himself. However, they had a spin-off called SwearNet, the movie. SwearNet, the movie, is in the world's book of records, Guinness Book of Records, with 935 F words.
Nice.
Take that, Movie Guide.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Wolf of
imagine that they haven't watched that movie.
Well, you know what? When I had a back and forth with Ben Kaiser, I said to him, I said, here's a good, wholesome family film for you to look at. I sent him the trailer for SwearNet. And he gets back to me. He goes, "This is not a Christian film." I'm like, no shit.
That's hilarious. Yeah, he I think after I reviewed that or read that article, he reached out to me. Like and I wouldn't be surprised if I've met him at some of these
Oh, he doesn't want to
events.
meet me because he knows what I think of Fireproof and Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. But see that yeah, that's so interesting because neither one are great movies. I don't see how someone can watch one of those movies. Now you can say, well, it's great. I think it's great because it says a thing that I agree with or whatever. I agree with with Fireproof's message, and I agree with the racism in Pearl Harbor. uh that's me. That's not me saying that. That's but with Fireproof, okay. I'm sure. Now I don't even agree with the message because the message seems to be even if your wife is cheating on you, still love her and love her back into not cheating on you or something, and allow your wife to treat you like crap. I don't think I think there's a degree where you do, but there's a limit, I think, to how much you are a doormat. And now, Courageous, their other movie, Be a Good Dad. Okay,
I
I can
actually
agree
didn't
with
mind
that.
Courageous.
Yeah, and I think there's elements where I'm like, it's cheesy, it's schmaltzy and sad and sappy, but the message I can, yeah, be a
I did
dad,
like
a good
Courageous. I
dad to
did
your
like it,
kids.
yeah.
But even that, I can separate. I agree with this message. I don't think the movie's good.
Mhm.
And I'm surprised at how many people who claim to love movies don't know how to make that separation, don't know how to see something and say, all right, I agree with it. Or even worse than that, the culture war movies that are like God's Not Dead or, movies or Unplanned or whatever that are political in nature, but packaged as faith-based films. And people are supporting it saying this is important because it's standing up against the woke and it's stopping it's stopping communism or whatever. And it's like, what does that have to do with Christianity? What does that have to do with whether or not this is a good movie? There's certainly any propaganda films, any message driven film can be poorly done. And I've seen poorly made left wing propaganda films as well. But I've seen a lot of great movies that have messages that I don't agree with. I'm like, okay, I don't agree with the message behind this movie, but wow, what a really well-made movie. I mean, Star Wars has the Force and the weird George Lucas religion all throughout it. Great. But at least some of those movies are great.
I was gonna say we gotta be careful criticizing Unplanned because that is the cinema snob's favorite movie.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Man, I had a lot of when I reviewed that movie, I really had to take the approach of is this like I avoided anything related to Abby Johnson, the lady who it's about, and her how much her story continuously changes. The her online presence, which is very uh bitchy, if I may use that word. And she, even for the studio, she seems to be a liability because she likes to talk, and she likes to she likes, if I don't think she'd be offended even if I said that her online presence was bitchy. I think she holds that as a badge of honor. But and then there's just even the marketing campaign where they're like, this was rated R because they hate us. And they even went up against K-Love, a Christian radio network, saying they won't play our movie, they won't play our trailer because they don't want the truth getting out, as if K-Love isn't perpetually pushing the exact same thing that PureFlix believes, and all of that. They're allies in the culture war, and yet because they wouldn't play the movie trailer, but I avoided all of that in my review because I really didn't want anybody getting distracted by any politics related to it. Not to mention the politics of it actually being a very hot button issue that people pretend is a black and white issue. That, oh yeah, of course if you don't, of course somebody should believe this or they're evil, and to act so naive, to play this meek. What, I don't get it. Why would you be mad that I brought up abortion? Well, it's a hot button topic. It seems like somebody who is a freshman in college comes home to Thanksgiving and has just learned about some new political issue, and they just are like, and they drop the microphone, they toss a grenade in the middle, and it's like, why is everybody mad? Well, because you came home and Uncle Larry isn't going to respond well to you saying this this thing that your professor taught you last week. And that was like the marketing for that movie. And it was it was very difficult for me to then make a review of that and avoid all of that. But I really didn't want that to be a distraction. And I wanted to look and say, is this a good movie? And even at its core, it's not a good movie. It's exactly what you were saying about Pearl Harbor. Not exactly, but very similar, where you have the bad guys and you don't give any sort of accessibility to describe or give reason for the motivation of the actions of this bad person. You can have somebody be bad, but to have them be that's a strange, it's an unrelatable way to paint a bad guy, I think. And please do that a lot. Sorry, I think my microphone just switched again.
Oh yeah, it did.
Oh, okay. I think that approach to, I think it's just poor filmmaking. I think of, there's a movie, speaking of Michael Bay, I think his movie The Rock is a movie that actually has a bad guy in it I always think of that because it's not a fantastic movie, but it's a fun movie. And the bad guy in that is actually motivated. He's a former military. He's somebody who devoted his life to the military and then feels betrayed by it and ends up, he's doing this and he has a reason and a cause. And he's like, my family suffered. I wasn't given what I was promised, and I'm taking it back and stuff. And you feel for him. You feel for the bad guy in that. And I love movies that portray the other side, or portray your bad guy as somebody who's motivated in a way that you actually look at and say, wow, how would I respond in this? It gets you to think about how you would act because you actually sympathize with that character. And Christian movies really struggle with painting the other side, whether it's the left or atheists or agnostics or whatever. Like they struggle with painting people like that as humans. And that then comes across as, to me anyway, it comes across as straw manning, and it comes across as propaganda, and it comes across as just an uninteresting story because you've poisoned the well and you've told me the ending before we've even begun.
I'm going to tell you though, you and I got a campaign to get a 4K copy of I'm Playing for Cinema Snob.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, it's funny going back to Fireproof. I remember when I saw that. Here's one of the criticisms I had. Here's what I would have done had it been me writing that. You know she's not really cheating on Kurt. You know how it's going to end. But what if we're made to believe she is cheating, even if she's not? I hated that cheap shot where the doctor opens its drawer and then there's his wedding ring, and he puts a.
Mhm.
I'm like, we're never told he's married through the rest of it. I felt that was just kind of slapped in there.
Yeah.
I know movie guy cheers at that. I didn't. I just saw bad writing.
Yay. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was like, what if we're made to believe, but we're find out in a nice dramatic way that no, no, she actually didn't.
Are you telling me that you would allow the audience to believe something for more than 2 seconds without explaining to them that it's not really it? Wow. I don't know. Sounds crazy.
I know movie guy would never go for that, but I think it would have
That's
made.
that was exactly, I made a cut of just the Javi storyline of Courageous. I made
Hmm.
it like an edit. It's like a 20-minute short film, and that's exactly what I did with that, where there's this frustrating moment in the movie where he finds out that he's not been fired. Then he calls his wife misunderstands, and there's like 5 minutes of them going back and forth of her, oh no, you got fired, and he's like, no, 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 well, actually, and you already know. So the way I cut it was that he goes into the boss's office, and then it it cuts away to the, so you don't find out what they talked about until he's on the phone with his wife and she thinks he got fired, and then you find out along with his wife that he didn't really get fired. Of course you know what's going to happen, but having, I think that maybe the Kendrick brothers struggle with that, allowing the audience to believe something, maybe believe a lie or believe something that's different, have that unreliable narrator in the film to add suspense, to keep you on the edge of your seat. Like, oh no, it, they do that in movies where somebody's dead and it turns out they're not really dead and stuff. Um, that's something that I feel like narratively, just in the edit, they could fix. And but you would actually have to hire good writers to do that.
Well, here's something interesting that come out of this, because I remember I listened to Howard Stern touch upon something like this, but I really didn't give it much thought until I saw Fireproof and I thought about how I would have edited it, you know? And it's strange because what Howard Stern was talking about was I guess he was interviewing a stripper or something like that, or somebody
Sure.
involved with
Very
porn
Howard
films.
Sterny.
Yeah, but and the whole thing that fascinated me was the idea of what's the psyche of the husband or boyfriend. Some of them get jealous, but what intrigued me is the guys that actually were into the idea of their significant other doing this. It was like watching the significant other be their entertainer in their movie, only lifelike. And somehow that kind of sprung to life to me. I don't do this, by the way, so I'm not going there,
Yeah.
but it made me think about that when I thought about the whole way they railroaded what could have been an interesting twist with Fireproof. What's interesting though is it came back to me because there was a movie. I'm trying to think what the name of it was now, but it had Rachel Hendricks on, who they praised in October Baby. And it was a movie where, let's see if I can look that up because I actually watched it and I saw something in that this is a movie, of course, that movie guy would recommend that I watch. But would they recommend me watch it for what I got out of it?
Mm.
Let me see. Was it the Perfect Wave? Was it that? Yeah, I think it was The Perfect Wave with Scott Eastwood. Okay. What was interesting about that is that there's a scene in it where she locks lips and kisses I think it's Scott Eastwood in that film. And only thing going through my mind is her real life husband turned on by this? And I'm sitting there thinking, "Thanks, movie guy, for inviting me to watch this. I didn't have to watch a porn. I didn't have to watch an R-rated film."
So,
And
you're thinking, so you're distracted. You're
I'm
thinking, you're
I had
referencing
that
back
going
that
through
kind
my
of
head
that
because they
cuckold
often
mentality of of
Yep,
her potential husband. Yeah.
yep. But it's funny, they talk about, "Don't watch this, but watch what we recommend."
Hmm.
Well, do you really want me to?
Yeah. I mean, that is quite the
By the
I've
way,
thought about that before.
I'm not married and I'm not cuckolding or anything like that. It
You
just
are
came to mind.
totally fine to feel you don't have to justify anything to me.
Yeah.
Though it is something interesting just about like when people recommend something.
Mhm.
Having grown up in the church and in a very conservative, very a lot of rules, a lot of legalism, as you would say in the world of Christianity. My parents would I always say my parents weren't that way. They just wanted people who were that way. They wanted to be part of the club, part of the crowd. So like I was homeschooled and we would go to these like homeschool co-ops and stuff, and you'd have people who they didn't watch any movies, they didn't watch TV. And we would sometimes my parents would go through a phase like they'd put the TV in the attic and say maybe we shouldn't watch TV because there's too much bad stuff on TV. But then like the Super Bowl would happen, and they're like, "Well, maybe we should bring it down so we can watch that." I mean, we can, it is the Super Bowl after all. And but I always think about, oh, this movie is recommended, and I'll often point out distracting things in Christian movies that seem like because even the really cheap ones feel like porn sometimes. It's like
Yep.
just this naive, what's about to happen. These two women are going out on a date, and now she's asking her back to her place. What am I watching? Did I pick the right movie here? And the that sort of thing. Like, so just thinking about all of these, here are the rules, here are the restrictions. But you think that even though when I was a teenager, I didn't have access to the internet the way that people have in their hand today, but I still, when I was hitting puberty, would get the underwear catalog, that section out of the newspaper when it would come, because when you're hitting puberty and you're a horny 12, 13-year-old boy, you find ways to be turned on.
Mhm.
And all of these protections of, oh no, we got to save them from this and that, and don't see this. It's But yet you recommend this movie, yet
Like
somebody could be
myself.
turned on by that. So it's a lot of it is they're trying to deal with this the symptom almost, and not saying that there is necessarily even a disease there, but you're ignoring the fact that there is sexuality, that
Mhm.
when you're a kid and when you're a guy, you have sexual desires, and there are healthy ways to express that and there are unhealthy ways to express that, but they're just ignoring it. This complete ignoring of you know discovering what your healthy sexual expression should look like. And I think that can be dangerous, but it also is funny. You're kind of like you're kind of it's a little bit of oh, you thought you could keep me from this, but you know what, I found a way.
And it's funny because, I mean, no disrespect to Rachel Hendricks, she's very beautiful,
Hmm.
but that's what I thought of when she locked lips with that guy. I kept
Yeah.
picturing myself as her husband, what I would think of. I don't know what he thought of,
Yeah.
you
I mean,
know?
there's got to be a level in which
There's no
when you're an
nudity.
actor. Yeah. Yeah. I remember there's this really, like, my cousins went to this really, really like independent Baptist, and they had this rule that women couldn't wear necklaces because it could draw attention to the breasts. And I remember my dad even thinking that was, he's like, guys don't need a necklace to draw attention to the breasts. We know they're there.
Oh, it's funny, when Movie Guide does these premieres, and when I see Evie Bear, attend these things and she's showing cleavage, I'm like, again, practice what you preach, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Well, her dad likes that. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I don't know. I have no proof.
I
I do
have
think it's funny they'll review movies sometimes together. And there's one of them, I can't remember what the movie was, but she introduces herself and she's like his daughter. I'm like, you don't, you're like in your 30s at least. You don't have to tell people that that's your dad.
yeah. But anyway, getting off topic here, my big issue with her is after the ice bucket challenge. I mean, ALS is what killed my dad, but after the ice bucket challenge turned out to be very big, there was another challenge that came out after Robin Williams left us called the Doubtfire Face Challenge for Suicide and Depression
Yeah.
Awareness. And it involved taking a pie in the face. And I had some of my guests actually do that. But I threw it out to her on, I suggested it to her on Twitter. And by the way, I've still got the email or the text to prove this, just in case she decides to deny it, which I got no doubt. But she goes, you have to nominate me first. So I went through and I did the challenge. And she was one of the people I nominated because they have connections. They could have gotten the industry involved because that was why the Ice Bucket Challenge took off.
Yeah.
Because nobody wants to see me do it, but I did it. Her response, I'm not, what a great cause, but I'm not taking a pie in the face, though. My response to her was, fuck you, and the horse you rode off in.
Jeez.
You know?
That's sad. That's sad.
Yep. 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 But yep, but they're all fine with passing that collection plate. This is stuff that's Movie Guide's done a lot to make me bitter towards
I
the
can
church.
tell. Yeah, you've
Yep.
got some personal experiences.
Yep. But another thing, they love to show these photos. I'm sure you've seen them. It's always the family of four with the kids on the couch watching television. I'm single. I got a cat. Does
Yeah.
everything I watch have to be made for a 4-year-old? According to them? Are they
Apparently.
watching The Passion of the Christ in that scene? I'd like to think they are.
That is funny, the kind of that's even my thought about Plugged In and about which I find Plugged In to be a little more reasonable, at least the Bob Waliszewski his like he's like we're not here to draw the line, we're here to just encourage people to have a line. So if you do have kids, like have limits. I think that's a reasonable approach to parenting. Don't just let your kids watch whatever they want to watch. Unless you do, that's on you as a parent. But, that's great. Encourage your kids. But I think the people who use Plugged In use it as here's the standard. We will not go see a movie if it has this number of whatevers. And I think that's contrary to even the desire. Like, have conversations. My parents, I think that's one thing I will definitely always thank my parents for is after we watched a movie, even if it was like, especially if there were like ideas or worldviews that were being presented that were different, my parents loved, especially my dad would discuss it with me. He would talk to me about, so what do you think about that movie? What do you think about the idea of, I remember the movie Vertical Limit, which isn't a great movie, but we watched that and we talked about, this idea of cutting the rope to save other people and what the whether or not that's an obligation in life and just really strong conversation. We'd go see movies a lot where like Avatar, for example, because that movie, the sequel just came out, and I remember getting out of that movie and thinking, like, both of us were like, that was so empty. Like that, there was nothing. I didn't like the original Avatar, but it was surprising, I think, to both of us because everybody was saying you got to see Avatar, you got to see it in 3D, you got to go to the IMAX. And I'm such like a story. I like good story, and if a movie doesn't have a good story, it is difficult for me to enjoy it. And that movie's story was so empty and silly. And but we had a great conversation about it. You know, I did a video that was my favorite Christian movies, and none of them were actually Christian movies. Uh, and one of them was The Golden Compass, which is, as probably most people will know, written by an atheist, somebody who clearly has had trauma related to the church, especially the Catholic Church, which many people who grew up in church have that type of trauma. And they have the series now, which I've been watching on HBO, his darkness, something like that. Anyways, The Golden Compass. But I think The Golden Compass, no movie has like, my dad and I had such a great spiritual conversation after watching that movie that I'm like, something that can inspire you to have a good conversation about spirituality is a better Christian movie than a movie that just tells you come to the front and pray a prayer. And to me, that's kind of what you were saying about they want in less of a sexual way, but they're like, go see this movie and you'll get this out of it. That's important. But you can get so much out of a movie that maybe even, you know, like Golden Compass is intended to be an atheist story, an anti-church story.
Well,
But
look
to
what I
me, I
got out
felt,
of Perfect Wave.
yeah. But you can, but to have a movie like that be intended for one thing and actually does the opposite, does something where because to me it's a sure you can be anti-church and be a stronger Christian. I always say, like, I don't want to throw the baby Jesus out with the bathwater, but man, is there a lot of dirty bathwater. And I don't care about the bathwater. You know, I have some friends who are atheists who go to like an atheist church. And to me, I'm like, that's so odd for me, just from my perspective,
Hmm.
because the church, going to church, singing the songs and stuff, that's the thing that if there is no God, I'm not doing. I'm not I'm not coming here for all this stupid stuff, people telling me what to do. And if there's no God, then fuck that. Like, I'm
Hmm.
not going to church. Um, those are the things that I only do, which I don't, like you were saying, I actually don't go to church as much either. And
I
because
still
I
read
don't,
my Bible.
yeah, because the church, you know, and honestly, there are people who are Christians who I connect with, and that's,
This,
I mean, that's what,
this.
I mean, that's what, I mean, that's what, I mean, that's what, I mean, that,
Oh, you. There you go.
I thought it was a CD case.
There you go. This is my
So,
dad's Bible. You know,
oh yeah,
I got. Yeah, yeah. I still read from my Bible. It's just I had a hard time with the whole attitude of Christians. You know, growing up, and um, I think a lot of time Christianity I often tell people, you know, stop with putting in the collection plate. Find a good charity, one that's reputable, and give to that, you
yeah,
know, or
absolutely.
something, you know, do something like that. But going back to what I said before, now we mentioned the whole thing of the picture and the family, and they're sitting there. I don't know what's wrong with the church's vision of sex because it's like I've only heard maybe 2 sermons in my life that had to do with the Song of Solomon's. That
Mm,
seems to be the book that every church wants to avoid.
yeah,
Here's the funny thing is, I don't want kids. I never wanted kids. I don't like kids. I got a cat. I'm good enough to have a cat, you
cats are
know?
great.
But I'll tell you something. I'm practically petrified of the idea of sex because you can't always trust protection. They say condoms are what 90% effective or whatnot. And I think I was traumatized when my older brother uh when I was like 18 told me that he got his girlfriend pregnant, you know? And I never forgot that, and I've tried to avoid anything like that, because, I hate the I don't want kids, but it's like the church, it's like you can't have, sex unless you have procreation. You
Hmm.
know, that
Yeah.
attitude ticks me off. And it's like if you and I've seen this so many times when people get married in the church. First thing is, when you go have kids, when you go have kids. Whatever happened to just fucking for fun? Or that is that considered lust to them?
I certainly hope not. I mean, it depends on the church that you're in, but yeah, that I mean, so never in a church that I went to was it like was that the main, nobody. I know that there's churches that are that way, that sex is just for, especially I think the Catholic Church often preaches that, though I didn't grow up Catholic. A lot of my friends, I grew up in Michigan, and I was the only Baptist on my block. And
Mhm.
but the what I experienced was a lot of guilt and fear in youth group about premarital sex, and which became just about sex, that there's this emphasis on, oh, it's, you'll an emphasis on the guilt that you would experience if you had premarital sex, and it would ruin your future marriage and future like sexual interactions, that life will be a lot harder. You're I and that's wrong. That's incorrect about what. Now, I'm not an advocate for go out and have premarital sex all you want,
Mhm.
for the reasons you mentioned. There are potential consequences to that, but I think that there was such an overemphasis on it that there are people who get married and still feel guilty because they've associated sex with guilt, that within a per even
Yep.
Sorry, my
Yeah.
my microphone once again messed up.
Don't worry about it.
Takes a little bit for it to
You're a
come back.
great
Okay.
guest, by the way. I love that
Oh,
you're
thanks.
just going with it. Yeah. You've got a check mark on your shirt. That means you're right.
Yes. The level to which people um get married and they feel guilty about having sex, I think that's where that's where a problem lies. I'm not an advocate for, yeah, I was trying to think of where I left off. I'm not an advocate for, hey, go out and have premarital sex all you want, because
Mhm.
I think there is something special. There's certainly something special. There's something special about, this is why I actually, this is what kind of convinced me to lean a little more towards the pro-life whenever possible side of the argument, is because I think there is something very important about the where life comes from, that
Mhm.
we, and I think there's something special and valuable about sex, that is where, I mean, human life is created, and that's awesome, and that's really important, though that's not all sex is. And there, God didn't give us that, God didn't make it feel really good just for no reason. It does feel
Mhm.
really good, and it is more than just making babies. And
Yeah.
but also there is a connection there. You make a genuine, a deep spiritual connection with somebody who you sleep with. And that's something that I think gets undervalued or underplayed as a response to the religious right, who's like, oh, we can't give them an inch, or else or they'll turn it into a Jesus thing. And unfortunately, I feel like that's society today, that's Twitter, and there's such little nuance. People can't have these just nuanced conversations about mental health,
Mhm.
um about sexuality, about any of the stuff, without it being, oh well, about, I mean, right now everybody's talking about police violence and stuff, and
Yeah.
they're unwilling. A lot of people are unwilling to admit, oh, these people are really bad and did a really bad thing, without being afraid that, oh, that means we should disband all police officers. There's a nuance here. you can admit that that a group of guys brutally murdered someone without people thinking that you're a far left anarchist. And you can admit that there is something important about sexuality, about the connection you make when you have sex with somebody, about the potential, the importance of pregnancy, and without people thinking you're a far right, you should be able to, without people thinking you're a far right pro-life, what is it, the Westboro Baptist Church
Oh,
person. I
gee.
I wish I wish that our society could have these types of conversations, and that's what's great about that's what I like about Brad, the cinema snob, is that
I love
when
him. Yeah.
we talk for 3 hours, I think, just about these types of nuance. And him and I are different on we see things differently on a lot of like political issues, and I'm sure you and I see things differently on different things. But I don't if there's one message I want people to get out of anything that I make, it's
Right. One message is here. Let me wait for this to come back on, and then
I can still hear
okay,
you.
there it is. Okay, here it is. If there's one message, it's that people aren't monsters. That the people can think differently than you. People can think very differently than you. That doesn't mean that they're out to end the world. Now, of course, there are monsters in this world. Most of them are billionaires or work for the government or whatever. But most of the people that you're running into on a day-to-day basis are just people, and they think differently, but you probably have more in common with that person than you think. And if we can start there and have these types of conversations, I think the world would be a better place.
Absolutely. Good question. Anytime you are at one of these junkets and you run into people from Movie Guide, how do they react to you?
It's funny. When I did my interview with Alex Kendrick, I think that because there is a level to where if you have prestige, if you have like a connection with somebody they deem as important, they have a hard time really pushing back against you. And I've had a few people like ask me, so why do you criticize Christian movies and claim to be a Christian? Don't you think that's, hurtful to the cause or whatever? And I don't think truth is hurtful to any cause unless,
Nope.
or at least if it is, then it's not a cause worth fighting for. I think truth is the most important cause. And if a cause needs to hide things in order for it to be valuable, then it needs to die. It needs to end. And so I'm not saying everything I say in my videos is truth, but it is something that I'm not writing factual. I'm not a journalist. I've had people criticize my videos for being biased. I'm like, yeah, it's my perspective. I have no obligation to be unbiased when doing a review of a movie. No reviewer, if any reviewer says I'm doing unbiased reviews, well, then what are you saying? It was a movie. They used film. They you're just giving facts about the movie. That's not, but when you're reviewing, you're giving your opinion, you're giving your thoughts. And so I usually, though, people are fairly nice face to face, but they'll ask me questions like, why are you, and I have an answer, because I think it's important. If a movie isn't good, I'm going to say it's not good. And if that stops people from watching it, great. Maybe they'll start watching better movies. And then, because I have had people say, as a Christian, I saw God's Not Dead and I thought it was fine. Then I watched a review and realized, oh, there are major issues with this movie, not just as a film, but as a movie, as something that is related to Christianity, that in that movie,
the atheist is like, my mom died, and the kid uses that as a weapon in.
He uses that as a weapon to win an argument. And it's like, why didn't you stop the argument? Wouldn't that be the Christian thing to do? And so I think it's a poor example of how Christians should handle interactions with other people. And so I think that's important. It doesn't matter if there's a greater cause, or there's a culture war here. Uh, there's there's some, it's good to, it's that same thing. Just separate. I'm not saying everything, just because one thing is incorrect doesn't mean everything's incorrect, but weeding out the problems. That's what, like, peer review, that's what they do in college and stuff. Peer review articles, and that's what makes things better. And a lot of these people who like these Christian movies and stuff claim to be capitalists, and yet they don't, like, reviews and people, like, user reviews is a major part of the market working. Like, you could, if you just had some company that's like when you go to a website and they've got reviews, but it's the company's website, they're like, this is great, this is fantastic. Well, you're not going to trust that. But if you go on Amazon and you see, an authorized purchase, and I bought this, didn't work, it sucks, don't buy it, you're far more likely to believe that. That's great. That's the market working. We trust each other more than we would trust the company says it's great. Well, that's, so what? In the same way, I think that that's part of the market of films, that people review it, they say what they think of it, and that puts pressure on these studios, if people stop watching them, to actually make better movies. And wouldn't these Christians want their faith being represented by a better movie? You would
Look at
think they would want
this.
that. Aw,
Skittles.
I have
It's a
three
Skittles.
I have 3 dogs in my room right now. There's one
Yeah.
right here.
Oh,
There's
look at that.
one.
Look at that
Yeah.
kitty. Look at that. Skittles
I've
is
got
like,
my cats, because this dog here, we're actually babysitting, or we're dog sitting, and we have 2 cats. But and here's Barkley. Come here, Barkley. This one's our dog. He's a poodle.
there you
He's
go. That's
a
a
big
big
boy.
poodle.
You're a big boy, aren't you? Yeah. But the cats are hiding in the room.
Yeah, mine came over, and my guests love it when I bring Skittles onto the screen.
Skittles is
Skittles
too
is a
cute.
Skittles is a rescue.
Aw. How
Yeah,
old is Skittles?
he's about 15.
Whoa.
Yeah,
That's he's getting up there. He's
yeah. Well, he's
he's
still
had a lot
active.
of experience. Yeah.
Yeah, but here's something I was gonna ask.
Yeah, man.
I remember, because I was born in 1972, so I'm gonna be 51 this year.
Wow.
I remember the first
You
movie.
look you look half your age.
I get that a lot, actually, from work, But, nonetheless, the first movie I remember seeing, and it was at the drive-in, I saw Pete's Dragon at 5 years
Yeah.
old. Do you remember the first movie you seen in a theater?
Oh man. Here, sorry. I know that my microphone messed up again. Yeah, it should fix itself. And sorry about this.
Oh, don't
I think it's the
apologize. You're
power.
good.
Here's my power supply on my laptop. There we go. Okay. Uh I bet something like a Disney movie, like Little Mermaid, or it's probably Little Mermaid might have been the first movie that I ever saw in theaters.
I think that was one of the best Disney animations I ever seen. I got to see that not in its initial release in 1989, but I did see it on a re-release, and very well told movie. Got you involved, unlike Fireproof.
Yeah. Yeah.
It got you involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that's during all those Disney movies, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, like those are my childhood, and that's, I didn't even know until I was older that I I just thought that's how movies, that's how good movies were, but really that's the Disney Renaissance. That's when the best of the best, great animators. I'm actually friends with an animator from Disney. His name's Chris Sonnenberg, and when I talked to him, he worked on, he was like an apprentice to those guys, and then ended up working on Tangled and a bunch of stuff a little
I
bit
like
after.
Tangled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I was talking to him about that. He's like, no, that's like the Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, like that was a pinnacle. That was a peak of animation, that you had all the best people being able to do their jobs. There was a lot of shift after that in Disney's like um hierarchy and the way management was done. But at that point, it was like the best people with the best with the best management style, able to create just amazing things. Lion King also is one of
Yeah.
those movies. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember the old drive-in theater. We saw the Star Wars trilogy there. We saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., and now we don't have any drive-ins here now.
Yeah.
But I saw my first IMAX in Toronto a few years ago. I saw Apocalypse Now on IMAX, which was
Oh wow.
great.
Yeah.
Yep. But nonetheless, I had a Canadian actress who invited me to my first convention. It was a horror film convention, and anyway, she was she was in a Hallmark movie just this last year, and we got to see it. And I'm going to tell you, it was fun hearing her say that she thought the movie was boring.
That's so funny. Well, sometimes, yeah, I found that actors are often the most fun to talk to because they, it's a job. A lot of times they just, yeah, I gotta do a job. And sometimes you act in a bad movie than a good movie, but you get a paycheck. And yeah, it's funny to hear from them like, yeah, I was given the script and I memorized the lines, but like they were changing lines on set or things like that. Like they are often the victims of these bad movies as well. So it's funny. It's funny to talk to some of the actors of these movies
I
because
remember
they
once,
know more than anybody that the movie's bad because they're not as
yeah.
invested in the pre-production
Well, Neil
and oh,
Breen
this is
doesn't know.
well, sure. That's a different story. There's a different animal when you've got the infamous director, producer, writer, actor, star. That runs rampant. I actually reviewed a couple movies, Christmas movies that had that disease in over this last over Christmas. I watched a bunch of those where it's like, oh, when you're watching, you're like, this actress is the director too, isn't she? Oh yeah, she is. This was Daddy gave her the money to make this movie.
Well, I know that there was it was stated that I think it might have been Ted Bear that said this, that a lot of these nude scenes and whatnot are scenes that we pay these people to do. They don't want to do them, and I don't deny that he's right to a certain extent. But these Hallmark movies that often get 3 or 4 stars from Movie Guide, it was funny hearing this actress tell me how boring this movie was, and I wonder how many people hate doing Hallmark movies because all they are is a paycheck.
Yeah.
Because they're all the same, and I've heard you say that. I remember I watched your review for uh, Belle and the Beast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which the only thing I could think of is that the leading lady was hot, and that was all I got out of it.
Yeah.
But other than
Yeah.
that, it was like this is not Beauty and the Beast. It's not anywhere near the same quality.
Even the Disney's Beauty and the Beast is better than that movie.
Yep. But I have seen a few of
Like, I
these,
mean, the
and
live
it's
action one is what I mean.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
like they're all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. It's predictable, but I think that's intentional. Like, I think Hallmark, especially, they have a list of this is what the movie has to be. But see, that's where he's like, oh, it made the most money. This is capitalism at its worst. Other than selling, other than the crony capitalism between the military and and businesses. But we won't necessarily get into that.
No.
The only thing worse than a company making bombs for the government is Hallmark movies. And it's the only thing worse. And but they've figured out, all right, here's a niche that we can keep cranking them out. They're easy to make. It's just the same movie over and over, just another gimmick, and people buy it. They make money. It's the perfect example of this makes money even though it's not good. It's not art. It's not intended to be. You would never want one of these Hallmark movies to win an Academy Award because they don't intend them to be that. They intend them to be easy money. And that's exactly, you can tell because you watch it and you should be able to tell. That's what blows my mind about people who watch these Christian movies or watch these love story movies or Christmas or whatever. And because it says something they agree with, because it says Jesus, they can't see that it's a bad movie. Like that this is not even that it's intentionally bad, it's just it's intentionally not good is what I will say. That they are ignoring what it would take to make it good and just cranking it out. I think kids content can be that way too, where it's like it's just for kids, and then I think kids content is the most like comparable to Christian content because it's not really a genre. People say it's a genre. No, you can have all kinds of genres within like kids content. You can have spy movies and love stories and whatever. Christian movies are the same. It's not a genre, it's a market. You have these are made for these people. These are made for kids. These are made for Christians. And in that, they're just patting each other on the back saying, wow, we really made this movie. We really reached out and tried to get people saved. Who's getting saved? You're the only ones watching it. You already believe this stuff.
I forgot all about this. I should bring this up because I've been told that the Kendrick brothers movies are supposed to be sermons. And
Yes.
I'm sitting there thinking, you know what? Who's being saved by it? Because
Right.
none of my friends want to see these movies.
Yeah. That's what gets me about they'll say that. They say, "Oh, it's not for non-Christians, it's for the church, that the movies are for the church." Okay, then why in your marketing campaign do you go around saying, "We got this movie on airplanes flying to Seattle. We got the, like they brag about these things that they got this movie in front of non-believers." I thought the movie wasn't for non-believers. So how does it benefit them? And obviously they have a salvation message in all the movies anyway.
Well, Jesus said, "Come, I'll make you fishers of men." But these people, it's almost like they're casting hooks into the tanks at the pet store. They're going after fish that are already caught.
Right. I heard it said once the Kendrick brothers make movies that are they're for women about their husbands. So so that they will then get their husbands to like, honey, we should watch this movie. I think you need to see it. And then the guy has to sit through, all right, we'll watch this movie. See how you need to treat me? Even if I'm having an affair, you should treat me well and serve me Chick-fil-A.
Well, okay. I watched this shit movie. Let's watch 9.5 Weeks now.
Yeah, exactly. That's
And the
probably what
Trailer Park
happens.
Boys.
You get when you're married, it's like, all right, fine, I'll watch this movie if we can watch what I want to watch next.
Yep. Yep. There
It's
you
true.
go. I mean, I'll take 9.5 weeks over friggin' Fireproof any day.
Yeah,
Learned a lot
exactly.
more from that.
Yeah. Well, man,
Okay.
I probably
I
have to
just
get going in just a bit.
in just a bit. Well, I had one more question for
Okay,
you.
perfect.
If you were somebody approached you for the first time, now I know your channel, but if somebody approached you and asked you about your channel, what reviews would you be most likely to draw them to? I'm also doing this for myself because
Yeah.
don't know what I haven't heard that I want to hear you really go into. So, what are the most fun movies you've gone in about?
Yeah, that's I love that. My favorite review was a movie called Unwanted Presence, and it was a Christian horror movie, and it wasn't scary at all. Spoiler alert. and it's beautiful incompetence through and through. And I had so much fun making that. Now, I don't know if it's my best review, but a lot of times if the movie's really hilarious, it makes me seem more funny. And that movie is so funny. I think the Princess Cut trilogy is also a must see. I've reviewed all 3 of those movies, and why there are 3, I cannot tell you. Uh, I really like I mean, I'm a huge fan of Mystery Science Theater and riff tracks, and so I like doing the movies that nobody's ever heard of. Those don't get as many hits, like my biggest review was God's Not Dead. The I know Cinema Snob War Room was really big for him, and but I like the ones that are just nobody's ever heard of, and I just riff on them, and they're that I can sniff them out. I can find the ones that are they're sincere but terrible. So I would say those are my favorites. Of course, the big ones. I think I don't love the God's Not Dead review, actually. I did do a re-edit of it, but it's so old that I'm like, man, I wouldn't. So I did a re-edit just of the original footage and re-uploaded it. And that one's actually, I think, better. It's a little more in the style that I do now. And the one Cinema Snob and I did the I Can Only Imagine, was it? Yeah. I think it was I Can Only Imagine. And that one was fun because I, as the outspoken Christian, and him as the not outspoken Christian, or not a Christian. I don't know. I would not venture to guess what his faith is. I know that he said he's not an atheist at this point. It's
He's
not
got faith
important.
in Lloyd.
Yeah. Yes.
They that was fun because he actually didn't mind the movie, and I didn't like the movie at all, and so we were able to have this.
Oh, you cut out. You cut out.
All right. I think
There
I
you
think it's back now. The thing I just said is the most profound thing, and I refuse to repeat it. But
There
it
you
would
go.
end all wars. It would create world peace. But you know what? We all missed it. Uh, it was it's a fun role reversal where I'm as the Christian hating this Christian movie, and him as not a Christian is like, I didn't mind it. It actually wasn't that bad. And so and that's actually kind of our perspectives on that movie. And obviously it's played up for the camera. But it was a lot of fun. So those are
Do you
good
want
ones.
to plug your web page and your
Oh,
channel
yeah.
and everything on
I mean,
here?
my channel is youtube.com/saygoodnightkevin. And that's all I'll point people to. You can go to saygoodnightkevin.com, but it's just going to then point you back to the YouTube channel. So, but that's really, that's where I put everything unless it gets taken down. And then I do put it on my website. I have a Patreon, but just on my website. And, but I do have a Patreon as well. But that's where I put anything that gets taken down for copyright reasons. I still put them up there.
I've had that issue recently. I did a tribute to Ray Harryhausen. I've done 2 or 3 on him with somebody that worked really closely with him. And when I used to do these with at the station, the audio ones, I'd put pictures to go along with the audio.
Yeah.
I got a copyright strike by the owner of one of those the photos I used, and I'm not monetized or anything, but I
Yeah.
ended up with a copyright strike and it got removed. Now, thankfully, I'm going on Spotify now, so I'll fix that problem.
Yeah.
But it makes me wonder, almost feels like our channels are being threatened here.
Yeah. Well, I certainly have had individuals who don't like the review that I've done do a copyright claim, and that's not what it's for. If you're reviewing something, you're commentating on it, and you're perfectly within your right to use footage from the thing to show examples of what you're talking about. And there's a few people now, a lot of people, I think I'll hand it to PureFlix. They have been really chill since they aren't, because the original God's Not Dead is distributed by Lionsgate, and they did copyright claim that video. But PureFlix themselves, I don't know if they just don't know how or what, but they've not claimed any of my videos. But there's been a few. The Rich Cristiano and the Cristiano brothers, I don't review any of their movies because they'll claim it immediately, and they gave me a strike, which is different than a copyright claim.
Yeah.
You get 3 strikes and they'll delete your channel, and he put 2 strikes on my channel, and I was able to get him to remove it by begging him and saying, I just won't upload, I'll just take the video down or whatever. But I hate that. That to me is
It's
bullying. And yeah, and threatening to get your channel removed just because you don't like that somebody said your movie's garbage when it is.
Well, this guy, I tried the same approach, and I was being reasonable. He would not remove the stick, told me go to the copyright school on YouTube. So that's when I started my Spotify at the beginning of the year.
Yeah.
And because he can't touch that because,
Yep.
yep.
That's
And it's
great.
also a safe landing. So in case somebody else in the future tries that bullshit on me, I can't have that.
Yeah.
But
that's exactly why I started my website, was because I own it. They can come after me if they want, but it's so easy on YouTube to make a copyright claim that they do it. But on my channel, on my website, I put it up there. So put it up.
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah. Well, you know
microphone's messing
what?
up again.
I thank you so much for coming on here today. And again, I offer my apologies if I come off edgy on some of the, I would love to issue an apology to Movie Guy, but they have kind of irked me a lot in the
Yeah,
past. But,
I've got people like that too. I would say, there's very specific people in this space that just they well, like I said about the Cristiano brothers, but also the Tim Che is another guy who has directed some really awful movies and has threatened me legally, and it just, and there's people like, well, I guess I did mention Abby Johnson as well. There are people in this space that can really get under your skin and don't know how to just play ball normally. That you're making content, so people will criticize it. That's part of the deal. I don't turn my comments off because I don't delete negative comments or whatever. People leave comments, say you suck. Perfect. That's what it's there for. Tell me I suck if you think so. The hypocrisy of making content, criticizing other people, and then not letting other people, or getting upset when other people criticize you, is ridiculous. So I completely understand what you're feeling, and no apology needed.
well, I hope you don't mind if I add you on Facebook.
Please do.
Yeah. And I would love to have you on next year at this time, and do a little catch up because I
That'd be
definitely,
great.
yeah, I love the fact that you responded. I'm honored that I got somebody on here. It's the same faith as me that gets it,
It's rare. Man,
and
it's awesome talking to you. I can't wait to hear this, and I'm gonna check out your other stuff as well.
well, I got a lot of stuff on there. They're starting to go on Spotify, but I got them on YouTube as well, and this will be unlisted, so it won't be to the public yet.
Yeah.
But I am going to send a link to you, and you can post it wherever you want to, regardless of it being unlisted. So just be patient on that end of it, but you can post it whenever I have it ready.
That's perfect.
Yep.
Well,
Before I let
Greg,
you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
yeah, absolutely. Just tell
Yeah.
me what
Just state your name and that you're from Say Goodnight, Kevin, and say you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Awesome. Hey guys, it's Kevin McCreary from Say Goodnight, Kevin, and you're listening to Greg Gilbert on Python's Paradise.
Absolutely. Keep up the great work, man, and keep the faith as well.
Thanks so much, dude. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. And we say good night, Kevin, despite the fact that it's afternoon.
Well,
But
good night, Greg.
But it doesn't make a difference to me because I usually work overnight, so
It's all the same.
all the same.
You're
Take
awesome,
care.
dude.
God bless you, man.
All right. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.